Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. If you're focused on leveling up your professional skills, well, you're in exactly the right place. Today, we're completely unpacking a pretty fascinating topic: modern, high-stakes selling methodologies. Specifically, we're looking at something called flow selling. You know, if you've ever felt like the traditional sales playbook is a little outdated or, frankly, just exhausting for both you and your client, you're absolutely going to love the structured breakdown we have for you today. Okay, let's dive into this. What if closing a complex sale didn't require high-pressure tactics? I mean, think about your own experiences for a second, whether you're a buyer or a seller. Have those traditional, aggressive, always-be-closing tactics started causing unnecessary friction? In today's complex buying environment, pushing hard usually just pushes buyers away. So what's the alternative? How do we actually guide a deal to the finish line without forcing it? Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, beyond the hard sell. Second, the FLOW acronym explained. Third, 4 stages of a call. And finally, why flow sells better.
Section 1. Beyond the hard sell. And this brilliantly illustrates the fundamental shift we absolutely have to make. The old, persuading harder method? It's basically a battle of wills. And let's be honest, it usually ends in awkward silences and people dodging your emails for weeks. It's those frustrating, aggressive closing tactics we all know way too well. The alternative is thoughtful dialogue. This isn't about overpowering the prospect. It's about guiding them so they actually recognize their own challenges. It's a completely collaborative approach. You aren't wrestling them to a decision, you're walking alongside them.
Which brings us to our formal definition. Flow selling is a consultative sales methodology. Now, this is heavily inspired by the principles behind Neil Rackham's legendary research into complex sales conversations. The entire framework is built on this simple yet incredibly profound idea. In high-stakes sales, buyers are far more likely to commit when they arrive at the conclusion themselves. You aren't just handing them the answer, you're providing the framework for them to find it on their own.
Section 2. The FLOW acronym explained.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how these 4 question types actually form a cohesive, logical sequence rather than just a random checklist. Each letter, F, L, O, and W, has a very specific focus and a targeted goal. You're following the current, so to speak. Let's look at each step individually to see exactly how this narrative builds.
It all kicks off with F for foundation. Your focus here is on the current environment, the processes, just the unvarnished facts. The goal is to establish context and genuinely understand the prospect's present state. But hey, quick warning here. Do not overload them with a million unnecessary questions. You just need enough solid ground to stand on before moving forward. It's kind of like mapping the territory before you start a hike. This sounds like asking, walk me through your current process for handling customer support tickets.
Once that foundation is set, we naturally progress to L for limitations. This is where you begin to gently probe the structure you just mapped out. Your focus is on surfacing friction points, obstacles, and inefficiencies. You're basically helping the buyer uncover frustrations or unmet needs that are slowing their progress or creating dissatisfaction in their day-to-day operations. You're shining a light on the cracks in their foundation. For example, you might ask, where do you typically see bottlenecks when ticket volumes spike?
And here is where the magic really happens. O stands for outcomes. Look, once they find a limitation, inexperienced sellers almost always jump straight to pitching their product. Actually, scratch that. They always do it. Do not do that. Instead, connect the limitation directly to the outcome. Explore the business, operational, or financial consequences of leaving those issues unresolved. You're building urgency by helping the buyer realize the true cost of doing nothing. You want them to feel the weight of the problem. You might ask, if those bottlenecks continue into your busy season, how is that going to impact your customer churn rate? Finally, we reach W for wins. You've established the foundation, found the limitations, and explored those painful outcomes. Now, you help the buyer to find the benefits of improvement. You help them articulate what success actually looks like and the tangible value of solving this problem. Notice the phrasing there. You help the buyer define it. The buyer themselves must articulate the win. Why? Because when they say it out loud, they believe it. This sounds like, if we could eliminate that bottleneck, what would that mean for your team's overall productivity?
Section 3. 4 stages of a call. Let's move to and see how this builds from the theory into actual field execution.
So, how do you structure an actual, living, breathing, 45-minute meeting with a client? The methodology structures conversations into 4 practical stages. 1. Opening, where you build rapport and transition into business. 2. Discovery.
3. Solution alignment, where you finally present your product mapping to their needs. And 4. Forward motion. But I want to heavily emphasize something absolutely crucial for you here. That entire FLOW sequence of questions we just learned, that happens almost exclusively within step 2, discovery. Discovery is the most important phase of the whole shebang.
So, the crucial point is how you end this process. Stage 4 is called forward motion. Notice it is not called the close. In complex sales, you rarely close in just one meeting. Your goal is to secure a clear next step, like a technical review, a stakeholder meeting, or a pilot program. You're advancing the opportunity logically, based on the wins the buyer just defined, rather than strong-arming a final signature before the buyer is truly ready.
Section 4. Why flow sells better.
We've seen the mechanics, but let's talk about the ultimate business impact. Like, why does this matter to your quota? Well, first, it drastically reduces buyer resistance. A question-led conversation feels collaborative, lowering defensiveness right out of the gate. Second, it creates deep buyer ownership. When prospects define their own challenges, they become highly invested in solving them. Third, it shifts the focus away from a race to the bottom on price and towards measurable outcomes. And finally, it provides team-wide repeatability, giving your whole organization a really consistent framework for complex buying cycles.
To summarize the heart of this methodology, consider this core principle from the source material. The strength of flow is not in persuading harder. It is in helping buyers think more clearly about where they are, what is holding them back, and what progress is worth to them. That is a profound shift, guys. The modern sales process is really an exercise in mutual clarity. You are a guide helping them navigate their own business landscape.
I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to reflect on. If your buyers arrived at the conclusion themselves through your structured, thoughtful guidance, how much stronger would your deals be? Think about your next big meeting. How can you replace your standard pitch with a flow of questions? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep asking great questions, and I will see you next time.